She loved you every day of your life. That's what the letter said. His own mother wrote it. Tucked it inside a lockbox he had just pried open with a crowbar, in a house she'd left to me instead of him. He was reading it on my front porch with his wrists zip-tied behind his back, while 2 officers emptied his pockets. A signed Elvis record that didn't exist. $200,000 in vinyl that his mother had already sold. And a son she couldn't trust with a single dollar. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 4 months before that night, before the cameras and the lockbox and the look on his face when he realized the fortune was gone, I was just a woman in a second-hand coat standing behind an espresso machine on Broadway, foaming milk for a bachelorette party that had been there since 4 in the afternoon. My name is Sloan, I'm 29. I teach piano out of my living room 3 days a week and pull espresso shots at a cafe called Benny's the other 4. And if that sounds like the life of a woman who has it figured out, I want you to know that I had cereal for dinner 6 nights in a row in October and called it a lifestyle choice. I live in Nashville, Belmont Boulevard. A craftsman bungalow with a porch that sags on the left side and a front door that sticks when it rains and a grand piano in the living room worth more than everything else I own combined. The house belonged to my mother-in-law, ex-mother-in-law, Vivian Ashford. She left it to me when she died, which sounds simple and is not. I'll explain later. Just know that Vivian loved me more than she loved her own son, and she put it in writing, and he has never forgiven either of us. His name is Grant. That's his real name. I thought about changing it, but I want him to hear it. I want him driving somewhere and have this come through his speakers and know that I am not afraid of his name anymore. We were married for 2 years. Divorced because he lied about money so many times. I lost count, then lied about lying, then cried about lying, and by the end I couldn't tell which version of him was real. But that's a story for later. Right now I need to tell you about a Wednesday night in early November. Nashville in November does this thing where the air gets sharp, but the trees haven't fully given up yet. Still color on the branches, but it feels borrowed. Like the whole city knows winter is coming and is pretending for 1 more week. I got home at 7:40 that night. The cafe had been slammed. My feet hurt. My hair smelled like oat milk and burnt espresso, and I wanted nothing except to lie face down on Vivian's couch and not move for approximately 900 years. I dropped my bag by the door, hung my coat on the hook Vivian installed in 1986, shaped like a rooster. I do not care for roosters, but I've never had the heart to replace it. Walked into the kitchen, poured water. Drank it standing at the sink, looking at Vivian's hydrangeas going brown in the backyard. Normal, all of it. Then I walked into the living room. Vivian's piano sat where it always sat, center of the room like a small black continent. A 1968 Steinway Model B. She'd bought it the year Grant was born. That piano was the heartbeat of the house. When Vivian was alive, you could hear Debussy floating through the open windows on summer evenings like it lived there. After she died, I played it every night. Same song, Claire de Lune, her favorite. Mine now too. The lid was open. Not all the way, just cracked, maybe 2 inches. Enough that the brass hinge on the left side caught the hallway light, and I could see a thin scratch on the metal that had not been there before. I always closed that lid, always. Vivian had a rule. Dust gets in the hammers, she used to say. Tone goes muddy. $400 to fix what a closed lid prevents. I had kept it closed for 14 months. Closed it after playing. Closed it after dusting. Closed it the way you close a prayer, out of habit and reverence and the sense that someone was watching. It was open. I stood in the doorway looking at that piano like it had spoken. My fingers went to the hinge. The scratch was fresh, bright against old brass. Someone had lifted the lid and set it down wrong. I pressed the G-sharp key. It felt different, sluggish. The mechanism underneath had been pushed sideways, then put back, not broken, disturbed. The way a drawer feels after someone's gone through it and tried to make it look untouched and almost succeeded. My eyes moved to the shelf beside the piano. Vivian's vinyl collection. 40 records, in a row, organized in a system she invented, involving small dots on each sleeve's back. 3 records were in the wrong order, not dramatically. Just swapped with their neighbors the way they'd end up if someone pulled them out to look and put them back without knowing the system. I knew that system, memorized it the way you memorize a room you love. Vivian taught me over wine one night, laughing at her own obsessiveness. I'd kept it perfect since she died because it was hers, and keeping it perfect was the closest I could get to keeping her. Someone had touched her records, opened her piano, been inside this house. I walked to the kitchen, opened the junk drawer. Vivian's scissors, the good ones with orange handles, were sitting on top of the takeout menus. I always put them underneath. 14 months, underneath. They were on top. I closed the drawer, put both hands flat on the counter, and I felt something cold move through my stomach. Not fear exactly, recognition. The way your body understands something 5 full seconds before your brain agrees. My phone was in my hand before I finished breathing. I called the only person I trusted to hear what I was about to say without telling me I was crazy. It rang twice. Sloan. Mika's voice was low and steady, like a woman who had never once been caught off guard. What's wrong? I think someone's been in my house. She didn't ask if I was sure, didn't ask if I'd locked the door, didn't say maybe you're tired, maybe you moved it yourself. She said, "Where's the key Grant gave you?" That question landed in my chest like a stone dropped into still water, not because it was unexpected, because it was the exact right question asked by the exact right person at the exact right time, and it meant that Mika already knew something I hadn't finished thinking yet. I need to tell you about Mika. Tamika Washington, 31 years old, sound engineer at a recording studio on Music Row, where she spends her days making country singers sound better than they deserve. She has a voice like warm gravel and a face that gives away absolutely nothing unless she wants it to, which she almost never does. Her father is a retired cop. Her mother is a retired kindergarten teacher. Mika got the calm from one and the patience from the other, and I have never once in 6 years of friendship seen her panic. Not when her car caught fire on Interstate 40. Not when her landlord tried to evict her illegally and she showed up to the hearing with a binder. Not now. She has 2 modes. Best friend mode, which involves wine and loud opinions about reality television. And what I call studio mode, which is the voice she uses when something is wrong and she needs you to do exactly what she says without arguing. This was studio mode. "Where's the key Grant gave you?" she said again. "It's on the entry table. In the little dish. Go get it." "Mika, I don't think that's going to tell me anything. He gave me back the keys when we signed the papers. I watched him put them in the dish." "Sloan, go get the key. Try it in the front door. Right now, while I'm on the phone." I didn't want to. I want to be honest about that. There's a version of this story where I am brave from the first minute, where I march to the door with purpose and conviction. That is not what happened. What happened is I stood in my kitchen holding my phone with both hands and my coat still half on, and I thought about how easy it would be to just go to bed, to decide that I'd moved things myself. That grief makes you forgetful. That a piano lid can open on its own if the humidity shifts, which it cannot, but I was willing to believe it if it meant I didn't have to walk to that door. "Sloan, I'm going." I walked to the entry table. The little ceramic dish sat there next to a tube of chapstick and a Kroger coupon that had expired in September. 2 keys inside. They looked exactly like mine. Same brand stamped on top. Same ridges and grooves. If you put them next to my actual keys, you would not be able to tell them apart unless you were a locksmith or a woman who had been lied to and needed proof. I picked up the first one. Front door key. I opened the door, stepped onto the porch, closed it behind me. The air was 41 degrees, and I was in sock feet, and I could see my breath, and somewhere down the block, someone was playing music I couldn't identify. I put the key in the lock. It did not turn. Not even a tease. Not even that little half catch where you think, maybe if you jiggle it? Nothing. Dead. The key went in, and the lock said no, and that was that. I tried the second key, back door. Walked around the house in my socks on cold concrete, which I do not recommend, and tried it in the back lock. Also, nothing. 2 keys, 2 locks. 0 function. I stood on my back steps in the dark with my phone pressed to my ear, and I said a word that my piano students' parents would not appreciate. "It didn't work," I said. "Neither of them?" "Neither." Mika was quiet for 3 seconds. I counted. When Mika is quiet for more than 2 seconds, she is not confused. She is organizing. "He gave you fake keys," she said. Not a question. "He gave me fake keys." 2 fake keys. 2 fake keys, Mika. Who does that? That's not even lazy, that's effort. That's like he went to a kiosk somewhere and had keys made for some other lock and handed them to me in the dish, and I said thank you. I remember saying thank you. I remember his face when I said it. What did his face look like? Relieved. Another silence. 2 seconds. Okay, she said. Here's what we're going to do. Change the locks. I'm calling a locksmith right now. No. Mika, there is a man with a working key to my house who has been inside it while I wasn't home. I am changing the locks tonight if I have to do it with a butter knife. Sloan, listen to me. Studio mode. If you change the locks tonight, he stops coming. Whatever he's doing, whatever he's looking for, he stops. You get one quiet night, and then a lifetime of wondering what he wanted and whether he'll try a different way. I don't care what he wanted. Yes, you do. And more importantly, the law cares. Right now, what you've got is trespassing. That's a misdemeanor. A fine, maybe probation if he's unlucky. He'll be back in your life in 6 months with a different excuse. And if I don't change them? If you don't change them, we figure out what he's after. We document it. And when we catch him, it's not trespassing. It's something that matters. I sat down on the back steps. The concrete was freezing through my socks and I did not care. A dog barked somewhere on the next block. The sky was that particular Nashville dark where you can't see stars, but you can see the glow of Broadway if you look south. You want me to leave my locks open for a man who has been going through my house. I want you to leave your locks open for a man who is about to go through your house one last time, and I want you to be ready when he does. I hated it. I hated everything about it, but here's the thing about Mika. She is almost never wrong. And when she is wrong in a way that still somehow works out, like the time she accidentally booked us a hotel in the wrong city, and we ended up at the best barbecue restaurant I've ever been to. The woman's mistakes have better outcomes than my plans. Fine, I said. Fine. But if he takes anything, if he touches that piano again, I am going to do something that requires a lawyer. That's actually the next step, but we'll get there. I went back inside through the back door, locked it behind me, which felt like a dark joke. Sat on the couch with Mika still on speaker. The house was quiet except for the radiator ticking the way it always did at night, and the occasional creak from the piano, wood expanding in the cold, a sound I had always found comforting and now found something else entirely. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Lorraine Ashford, Grant's mother. A heart emoji and the words, "Thinking of you, sweetie." Vivian would have wanted us to stay close. Lorraine had not texted me in 8 months. Not since the divorce was finalized. Not since the last time she'd stood in my kitchen and told me she understood why I was leaving her son, and then gone home and told her son everything I'd said. Mika. What? Lorraine just texted me. Silence, 1 second. 2. She's not thinking of you, Mika said. She's thinking about you. Preposition matters. I looked at Lorraine's text for a long time. The heart emoji. The sweetie. The invocation of Vivian's name like a greeting card you buy at a gas station because you forgot the real one. Vivian would have wanted us to stay close. Vivian, who had told me privately on 3 separate occasions that Lorraine had the emotional depth of a birdbath. Vivian would not have wanted us to stay close. Vivian would have wanted Lorraine to stop using her name. She's checking on me for him, I said. She's either checking on you for him, Mika said, or she's volunteering. Either way, every word you say to Lorraine from this point forward is a word you're saying directly to Grant. Understand? Got it. Don't reply tonight. Don't reply at all until we have a plan for what you want her to carry back. I put the phone face down on the coffee table. The screen glowed through the wood for a second, then went dark. I sat there in Vivian's living room, on Vivian's couch, with the piano ticking softly in the corner the way old wood does when the temperature drops, and I listened to the house. You know that sound a house makes at night when everything else is quiet? The radiator clicking, the refrigerator humming, the pipes doing whatever pipes do in the walls when they think no one is listening. This house had all of those sounds, and I had loved every one of them because they were Vivian's sounds. They were evidence that this house was alive and that it had been loved by a woman who had kept it going for 38 years with stubbornness and piano music and a garden that could grow tomatoes in weather that had no business producing tomatoes. Now those sounds meant something else. Now they meant I was alone in a house that someone else had a key to, and the someone was a man I had married. Here's the thing I had to sit with that night. The thing I think everyone who's been where I was has to sit with eventually. I had loved Grant. Not as much as I thought I had, it turned out, but I had. When you love someone, you give them small pieces of your life on purpose. the song you play when you're sad, the drawer where you keep your good scissors. The way you organize your records by a system your dead mother-in-law taught you over wine. He had taken all of those pieces, and he had used them to come back when I wasn't looking. I need to tell you the part I haven't told you yet. The real reason the marriage ended, not the version I told friends, which was, "we grew apart," a phrase so meaningless it should come pre-printed on divorce papers. The real reason. It started in the spring, about 6 months before I found the piano open. Grant had gotten quiet. Not sad quiet, calculating quiet. The kind of quiet where you walk into a room and someone closes a laptop just a little too fast. I noticed it in May. By June, I was paying attention. By July, I was checking. I found the apps on a Tuesday. I remember it was a Tuesday because I had just come home from teaching a 9-year-old how to play Für Elise, and my ears were still ringing from her enthusiasm, which was significant, and her accuracy, which was not. Grant was in the shower. His phone was on the kitchen counter. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I'd do it again. Coinbase, Robinhood, 3 different crypto trading platforms I'd never heard of, with names that sounded like rejected video games. His portfolio history looked like a heart monitor during a horror movie. Up, down, 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 down. He had put $19,000 into something called a meme coin in April, and by July it was worth about $400. He had borrowed against our joint credit card to fund a second account. He had a PayPal history that looked like a flipbook of desperation, small transfers getting smaller, the digital equivalent of a man checking his pockets for change. I sat on the kitchen floor with his phone in my hands and I cried. Not for the money, though the money mattered. For the lie. For the months of quiet. For the laptop closing. For every time he'd said we're fine when we were not fine, when we were so far from fine that fine was in a different zip code. That's why I ended it. That's why I told him to leave his mother's house. And when I say his mother's house, I mean it literally. Vivian had left the house to me in her will, not to Grant. To me. She had told me once, the year before she died, sitting at this very kitchen table with her reading glasses on and a cup of Earl Grey going cold, "Sloan, I love my son. But if I leave him this house, he'll sell it inside a year and put the money somewhere stupid. You'll keep it alive. Promise me." I promised. Grant had contested the will. He had hired a lawyer and gone to court and argued that his mother wasn't of sound mind when she wrote it, which was a claim so absurd that the judge had actually paused before ruling against him. Vivian Ashford had been of the soundest mind in Belmont Boulevard. She had been doing the crossword in ink the week she died. The house was mine, legally and permanently, and Grant had never accepted it. I hadn't told anyone the full story at the time, not even Mika. I was embarrassed for him, embarrassed that I had married a man who would contest his own mother's wishes and lose. Embarrassed that the crypto losses meant he was probably broke, and that being broke was probably why he'd gotten so interested in this house in the last months of our marriage. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. Because here's the other thing I was remembering. Sitting on that couch at 11 at night with fake keys in a dish and a text from his mother glowing on my phone. The last 6 months we lived together, Grant had asked me about Vivian's safety deposit box at least once a month. Casual at first. "Have you thought about opening Mom's box?" Then less casual. "You really should get that taken care of, Sloan." Then, once, with an edge in his voice that I had never heard before, "Why are you putting it off? What are you afraid of finding?" I hadn't opened it because every time I thought about it, I sat down at the piano and played Clair de Lune until my fingers ached and my eyes blurred and the grief passed just enough to let me function. That's why. That's the only reason. But Grant didn't think that was the reason. Grant thought I was protecting something. Grant thought Vivian's safety deposit box contained the thing he'd been hearing about since before she died. The thing the whole neighborhood had whispered about for years. Vivian's vinyl collection. The records. The Elvis with the signature. The Johnny Cash original pressing. The Patsy Cline limited run. $200,000 in rare vinyl that his mother had spent 50 years collecting and that everyone in Nashville believed was still sitting somewhere in this house. It wasn't. But he didn't know that. "Mika," I said into the dark. "Still here. He's not just coming into my house. He's looking for something specific. Tell me." "I think he's looking for $200,000 in vinyl records that don't exist anymore." Mika was quiet for 4 seconds. The longest silence I'd ever heard from her. "Oh, Sloan," Here's what you need to know about Vivian Ashford. She loved three things in this life: vinyl records, Claire de Lune, and the look on a liar's face when the truth walked into the room. She started collecting records in 1971. She was 23. Bought her first one at a flea market in East Nashville for $1.50, a Hank Williams 78 with a scratch across the B-side that made the needle skip during I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. She told me once that the skip was her favorite part, said it sounded like the song was catching its breath. By the time she was 60, she had over 300 records. By 70, she had something else entirely. She had a reputation. Vivian Ashford's vinyl collection was one of those Nashville legends that everyone talked about and nobody had actually verified, like the supposed speakeasy under Printer's Alley or the rumor that Dolly Parton once bought a stranger's groceries at the Piggly Wiggly on Gallatin Road. People said she had an Elvis Presley Sun Records original with a signature on the sleeve. They said she had a Johnny Cash pressing from 1955 that collectors would auction their kidneys for. They said she had a Patsy Cline limited run from before the plane crash that was worth more than most houses on Belmont Boulevard. Some of that was true. Some of it was myth. Vivian never corrected anyone because Vivian enjoyed the myth. She liked being the woman with the records. She liked the way people's eyes changed when they walked into her music room and saw the shelves. She liked knowing something they didn't. I need to tell you about the last Christmas dinner. December, 11 months before I found the piano open. Vivian was still alive, still sharp, still doing the crossword in ink and yelling at squirrels from the kitchen window and making a sweet potato casserole that could make a grown man weep. Grant and I were still married. Barely. The crypto had already started, but I didn't know yet. We sat at Vivian's dining table, the one that's now my dining table, with Lorraine across from us and Vivian at the head, wearing a red cardigan, and her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead like a crown. Grant had been drinking. Not a lot, but enough to loosen the thing in him that usually stayed hidden. The calculating thing. He waited until dessert. Until Vivian was relaxed and laughing about something the neighbor's cat had done to her garden. "Mom," he said, "have you ever had those records appraised professionally?" The table went quiet. Not dramatic quiet, just the particular silence that happens when someone asks a question everyone knows they shouldn't have asked. Lorraine looked at her plate. I looked at Grant. Vivian looked at Grant over her reading glasses with an expression I will carry with me until I die. $212,000, she said, give or take a Patsy Cline. Grant's fork stopped moving. "You're serious," he said, as a heart attack, which, at my age, is a phrase I should probably stop using. She smiled, sipped her wine. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" "Just curious." "Mem." She was lying. I need you to understand that. Vivian was lying to her son's face at her own dinner table on Christmas, and she was enjoying it the way some people enjoy a good crossword. The number was made up. The tone was theater. The look on Grant's face was her entertainment. I didn't know she was lying at the time. I found that out later. But Vivian knew. Vivian had been lying about those records for years because it amused her and because it kept people interested and because I think some part of her wanted to see who would show their hand first. Grant showed his hand that night. He went quiet for the rest of the evening, in a way that I recognize now but didn't then. Not sad quiet, writing numbers in his head quiet. After dinner, while Grant was in the bathroom and Lorraine was loading the dishwasher, Vivian pulled me into the kitchen. She put her hand on my arm and she looked at me with those sharp brown eyes and she said, "That boy has the eyes of a man counting money that isn't his. I love him because I have to. I trust him about as far as I can throw this piano." I laughed. I shouldn't have. She wasn't joking. "Sloan, honey, whatever happens with you two, and I suspect something is going to happen, don't let him near my things. Not the records, not the house, not anything that has my name on it. He'll sell it. He'll sell all of it and put the money somewhere stupid, and I will haunt him from the grave if he does. Vivian, he's your son." "He is, and I've loved him every day of his life. But love doesn't make a man trustworthy. It just makes you sadder when he proves he isn't." She died 4 months later. Heart thing, quick. The kind of death where everyone says at least she didn't suffer and you want to throw your sweet potato casserole at them. Here's the part Grant never knew. The part nobody knew until I opened a safety deposit box 14 months later on a Friday afternoon. Vivian had sold her entire vinyl collection 3 years before she died. Every record. The Elvis, the Johnny Cash, the Patsy Cline, all of it. Through heritage auctions in Dallas, the total came to $187,000. She donated every cent to the Nashville Public Library. They used it to build a music listening room on the second floor. It has headphones and turntables and a collection of donated records and a small brass plaque by the door that reads the Vivian Ashford Music Room. For anyone who needs a song. She had turned her collection into a room where strangers could listen to music for free. She had turned Grant's imaginary inheritance into a public gift. And she had done it so quietly that nobody in Nashville had noticed, because Vivian Ashford was the kind of woman who could move $187,000 without making a sound. Grant didn't know. He had been walking through my house for months looking for records that were already hanging on a wall at the public library, cataloged and donated and gone. He was hunting for a fortune his mother had given away 3 years before she died, because she loved music more than money, and she loved strangers more than she trusted her own son. I sat on the couch that night, holding my phone, and I thought about that Christmas dinner. Grant's fork stopping. Vivian's smile. $212,000, give or take a Patsy Cline. My dead mother-in-law had set a trap of her own without even trying. She had told a joke, and her son had believed it, and built his whole plan on the punchline. I started laughing. Not a good laugh, the kind that has a crying chaser. Thursday morning, I woke up at 6:15 because my body had decided sleep was no longer a service it provided. I lay in bed for 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the fact that somewhere in Nashville, possibly within a few miles of where I was lying, a man I had once slow danced with at our wedding was plotting how to get back into my house and steal records that had already been donated to the public library. The absurdity of it should have been funny. It was not yet funny. It was 6:15 in the morning and I had not brushed my teeth, and nothing is funny before you brush your teeth. Mika had texted me at 5:48, which meant she hadn't slept either. 3 words: talk to the neighbor. I did not want to talk to the neighbor. Talking to the neighbor meant admitting out loud to another human being that my ex-husband was breaking into my house, and I had not yet graduated to that level of vulnerability. I was still at the stage where I was telling myself it might stop on its own. That's a stage, by the way. It doesn't last, but it's real, and I was in it. But Mika was right. Mika is always right. It's her most annoying quality. The neighbor was Mrs. June Yu Nakamura, 65 years old. Lived 2 houses down in a pale blue cottage that looked like it had been decorated by a woman with very specific taste and unlimited access to a botanical garden. She was a retired ikebana instructor, which, if you don't know, is the Japanese art of flower arranging, and if you do know, you already understand the kind of person she was. Precise. Deliberate. A woman who could spend 45 minutes positioning a single branch and consider it time well spent. Mrs. Yu Nakamura had a Nest camera pointed at the street from her front porch. She'd installed it 2 years ago after someone stole a bonsai tree from her yard. Not just any bonsai. A juniper she'd been training for 11 years, worth about $3,000, which she told me once with a calm that was more frightening than anger. Someone took 11 years of my work in the middle of the night, Sloan. I installed a camera the next morning. I will not be surprised again. She had not been surprised again. At 7:45, I walked across 2 lawns in my slippers, holding a mug of coffee I'd made too strong because I'd measured nothing and cared about less. Mrs. Yu Nakamura opened the door before I knocked. She looked at me for 3 seconds without speaking. She had a way of looking at you that felt like being read. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "Come in." Her living room smelled like green tea and cedar. There were bonsai trees on every surface, small ones on the windowsill, a large maple on a stand by the fireplace, and ikebana arrangements in ceramic vases that probably cost more than my monthly rent. It was the most peaceful room I had ever been in, and I immediately wanted to cry. "Mrs. Yu, do you by any chance still have footage from the last few weeks? Of the street?" She tilted her head, the same way her bonsai tilted. Slight, considered. "I have footage going back 4 months. Cloud storage. My grandson set it up." She paused. "Is this about Grant?" I must have made a face because she added, "I see things, Sloan. I'm retired. Seeing things is my full-time job now." 12 minutes later, I was sitting on her sofa, which was firm and spotless, holding my coffee mug on a coaster she had placed without asking, watching footage on her tablet. Mrs. Yu Nakamura's camera angle was better than I'd hoped. It caught the full street in front of both our houses, including my driveway and the first few steps of my front walkway. Not the porch, but the approach. "Here," she said, tapping the screen. "Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, 1:45 in the afternoon. A black Dodge Charger rolled into frame. Slow. Too slow for someone who knew where they were going. It passed my house, brake lights flickering, then parked 3 houses down on the opposite side. The driver did not get out for 4 minutes. Then a figure in a dark jacket walked back toward my house, turned up my walkway, and disappeared from the camera's view. He was inside for 23 minutes. I know because Mrs. Yu Nakamura had already timestamped it. She had a spreadsheet. She had been watching before I asked. I wasn't certain, she said, reading my face, but I was paying attention. We scrolled. The Dodge Charger appeared 3 more times in the last 3 weeks. 4 total visits that her camera caught, each one on a weekday, each one in the early afternoon, each one when I was not home. "He knows your schedule," Mrs. Yu Nakamura said. "Not a question. He lived with me for 14 months. He knows when I teach and when I work at the cafe." She nodded once, then she tapped another timestamp. The second visit, a Thursday, same Dodge Charger parked down the block. But this time, about a minute before Grant's car appeared, another car pulled in across the street. A silver Honda Civic. It parked, engine running. The driver never got out. "Who is that?" I said. "I don't know." But he waved at me. He what? He waved at me. Through my window. I was watering the maple bonsai by the front window, and this young man in a silver Honda Civic looked directly at my house and waved. Like we were friends. Like he was delivering a package. She paused. "He is either very stupid or very polite. I think both." Kyle, Grant's cousin. 26, worked part-time at a tire shop in Antioch, had the general energy of a golden retriever who had been asked to commit a crime. I'd met him exactly twice during the marriage, and both times he'd called me ma'am and asked if we had any Mountain Dew. He was the lookout. Grant had brought a lookout. Grant had brought a lookout who waved at the neighbors. I sat on Mrs. Yu Nakamura's spotless sofa, and I felt the thing I'd been trying not to feel since Wednesday night. Not fear, not sadness, something colder. The realization that this was not a man sneaking in on impulse. This was planned, coordinated. He had a schedule. He had a partner. He had a system. I stood up. My hands were shaking badly enough that coffee sloshed over the rim of my mug and onto Mrs. Yu Nakamura's hardwood floor. I opened my mouth to apologize, but she was already there with a cloth, wiping it without a word. "Sloan," she said as I reached the door. I turned. "Lock your doors." "I'm working on it, Mrs. Yu." She looked at me with those steady ancient eyes. "Work faster." I walked home across her yard and I looked at my yellow bungalow. The porch sagging on the left. The rooster hook visible through the front window. The piano waiting inside like a held breath. My house. Vivian's house. The house a man I had once married was entering with a schedule and a lookout and a crowbar-shaped plan. He wasn't desperate. He wasn't confused. He wasn't checking on me. This was a operation, and he had been running it for weeks. When I got back inside, I did something I should have done the night before. I walked through Vivian's house the way a detective would. Not the way a woman who lives there would, skimming past the familiar, filling in the blanks with memory. The way a stranger would, looking for what didn't belong. The living room first. Piano, couch, bookshelf, Vivian's framed print of a mockingbird she'd bought at a craft fair in 1992. Nothing visibly wrong. But I wasn't looking for visible anymore. I was looking for the kind of wrong you only notice when you've memorized the right. Then the music room. Vivian's music room was the second bedroom, the one at the back of the house with the window that faced the garden. She'd converted it before I ever moved in. Built-in shelves along 2 walls, floor to ceiling, packed with vinyl records in their sleeves. A turntable on a low cabinet. A reading chair reupholstered in blue velvet that she'd found at an estate sale and loved beyond reason. Concert posters thumbtacked to the wall, Ryman Auditorium shows from the 70s, A Grand Ole Opry bill from 1968 that she claimed to have attended, which I believed because Vivian did not lie about music. She lied about everything else for sport, but never music. I started with the shelves. 40 records remained. Vivian had sold the valuable ones through heritage auctions 3 years before she died, but she'd kept the rest. The ones that weren't worth money, but were worth something to her. Everyday pressings. Albums she'd played on Sunday mornings. The kind of records that smell like dust and devotion when you pull them from the sleeve. I went through them one by one. Pulled each record out, checked the sleeve, checked the dot system on the back. 6 of them had been removed from their protective inner sleeves. You could tell because the plastic had been refolded wrong, creased in places where Vivian's careful hands had never creased them. And on the surface of the vinyl itself, on 6 separate records, there were fingerprints, fresh ones, oily and sharp against the grooves. He had been checking them, one by one, looking for the Elvis, looking for the Johnny Cash, looking for the Patsy Cline, pulling each record out, holding it up to whatever light he was using, probably his phone, reading the label, checking the condition, trying to figure out which one was the golden ticket. None of them were. The most valuable record on that shelf was a 1973 Loretta Lynn, pressing worth maybe $40 on a good day at a generous flea market. He had been searching for treasure in a room full of memories and finding nothing but music. Then I checked under the piano bench. Vivian kept things under there, sheet music mostly, a few old programs from recitals she'd attended. I'd cleaned it out after she died, but hadn't been thorough, because being thorough meant being finished, and I wasn't ready to be finished. I pulled out the stack of sheet music, and underneath it, face down on the bottom of the bench compartment, was a small piece of paper. A receipt. From Quick Cash Pawn on Dickerson Pike, dated 2 weeks ago. 1 item assessed. Description: vinyl record, Patsy Cline, LP, standard pressing. Condition: fair. Assessed value: $4. I sat on the floor of Vivian's music room holding that receipt, and I felt several things at once. He had taken a record from this house. He had physically removed one of Vivian's records, driven it to a pawn shop on Dickerson Pike, and asked someone behind a counter to tell him what it was worth. And someone behind that counter, probably a 20-year-old in a band tee who couldn't have cared less, had looked at Vivian's Patsy Cline and said $4. $4. This man who could not be trusted to remember our anniversary and 2 years of marriage, who once tried to tell me at a dinner party that Nashville was the capital of Tennessee, and when I corrected him, doubled down and said he was thinking of the cultural capital, which is not a thing the government recognizes, who believed the word supposedly was a word and defended it with the confidence of a man who has never once consulted a dictionary. This man had taken one of his dead mother's vinyl records to a pawn shop on Dickerson Pike and been told it was worth $4, and then he had come back for more. Because $4 was not enough. Because he still believed the Elvis was here. Because he still believed the fortune was real. Because a dying woman had told a joke at Christmas dinner, and her son had written the punchline on his heart like it was a bank statement. I started laughing. It came out of me before I could stop it, hard and ugly, the kind of laugh that sounds like a cough and tastes like salt. I sat there on the music room floor, holding a $4 receipt and laughing until my stomach hurt, and my eyes burned, and the blue velvet reading chair looked blurry. Vivian would have loved this. She would have absolutely cackled. She would have taken that receipt and taped it to the refrigerator and pointed at it every time someone came over and said, "That's what my boy thinks my music is worth." $4 and a trip to Dickerson Pike. I put the receipt in my pocket. Evidence now. Not funny, well, still funny. But evidence. I called Mika. He's been going through the records one by one. How many? 6 that I can tell. Fingerprints on the vinyl. And Mika, what? He took one to a pawn shop, Patsy Cline. Standard pressing. They offered him $4. Silence. 1 second. 2. 3. That is actually the saddest thing I've ever heard, she said. It's the saddest thing that's ever happened on Dickerson Pike, and that is a street that has seen some things. We need a lawyer, Sloan, not my dad's poker buddy. A real one. You know someone? My boss's wife plays in a jazz trio with a man named Reggie Fairbanks. He has a bow tie collection and a win rate in court that would make you cry. He handles estates and property disputes and, I'm quoting here, men who think they're smarter than they are. That's very specific. Reggie is a very specific man. I'll call him in the morning. I hung up. I sat on the music room floor for another minute, looking at the shelves, the posters, the blue velvet chair. The room still smelled like Vivian. Like old paper and lemon polish and the faint ghost of the perfume she wore every day for 30 years, even though it had been discontinued in 2004 and she'd been hoarding the last bottle like a war ration. "Vivian," I said out loud, "your son tried to pawn your Patsy Cline and they offered him $4. The house creaked. The piano in the other room made a soft sound, not quite a note, more like a sigh. Wood settling, temperature shifting, nothing supernatural. But I took it as a laugh. Reggie Fairbanks III had an office on West End Avenue in a building that smelled like old leather and confidence. I sat across from him on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock in a plaid skirt I'd had since college, holding a paper cup of office coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during a previous election cycle, and I told him everything. I need to describe Reggie to you, because he matters, and because I have never met a human being who so precisely matched his own name. He was 58 years old. He had a voice like a cello in a cathedral, deep and deliberate, the kind of voice that makes you sit up straighter without being asked. He was wearing a paisley bow tie, which I would later learn was one of approximately 40 bow ties he owned, organized by color and occasion in a display case in his closet, like butterflies in a museum. He was knitting. I want to be clear about this. The man was knitting while I talked. A small blue square of something that might eventually become a scarf or a washcloth or a statement about his general approach to multitasking. The needles clicked softly while I spoke. He did not interrupt once. I told him about the piano, the fake keys, the footage from Mrs. Yu Nakamura, the 6 records with fingerprints, the receipt from the pawn shop on Dickerson Pike, the $4, the crypto, the divorce, the will, the vinyl legend, the safety deposit box I hadn't opened, the Thanksgiving joke about $212,000. All of it. 9 minutes. I had practiced. I'd written bullet points on the back of a gas station receipt because I didn't have index cards, and I am not a woman who keeps index cards. When I finished, Reggie set his knitting down on the desk. He aligned the needles parallel. He looked at me over his reading glasses, which were rectangular and expensive, and somehow made his face more serious than it already was. "Okay," he said, "here's what you've got, and here's what you don't." "Okay, what you've got is trespassing. In Tennessee, criminal trespass is a Class C misdemeanor, a fine, community service if the judge is in a mood, maybe probation if he has prior issues. Worst case for him, he pays a few $100s and walks away annoyed. That's not enough. No, it is not. What you want is burglary. In Tennessee, burglary is entering a habitation. Your house counts, without the effective consent of the owner, that's you, with the intent to commit a felony, theft, or assault therein. That's a Class D felony. That is real time, real record, real consequences that follow a man to every job application and rental agreement and background check for the rest of his natural life. He paused. The knitting needles stayed still. "But," he said, "but, you have to prove intent. Him being in your house is trespassing. Him going through your record collection is suspicious. But for burglary, I need him reaching for something that belongs to you with the documented intent to take it. Ideally, I need him holding it. Better yet, I need him prying open a container to get at it. Premeditated, not opportunistic. A man who wanders into a house and picks up a necklace is one thing. A man who brings a crowbar to a house he has been casing for 3 weeks to steal a specific item he has been talking about for 2 years is something else entirely. He has been talking about it for 2 years. I know. And that's the part that interests me." Reggie leaned back in his chair. The leather creaked. "Your ex-husband contested his mother's will in court. He argued that the house should be his. He lost. The judge ruled that the property belongs to you, legally and permanently. That ruling is on file. It's public record." "Right. Which means every single time he has entered that house since the ruling, he has done so with the full knowledge that it is not his property. He cannot claim confusion. He cannot claim habit. He cannot say he thought he still had a right to be there. He litigated that question, Miss Prescott. He took it to a courtroom, and a judge answered it. He litigated his way out of his own alibi. I had not thought of it that way. I sat there with my terrible coffee and my gas station bullet points, and I felt something shift, like a lock turning from the inside. "Furthermore," Reggie said, and he said furthermore the way a musician hits a downbeat with weight. "Your ex-husband has been telling people in this city for the better part of 2 years that his mother's vinyl collection is worth over $200,000. He said it at the Christmas dinner. He said it to friends. He said it to his mother, Lorraine, who has repeated it to others. That is not a man who stumbled into your house and happened to open a closet. That is a man with a target. That is a man with a shopping list." A shopping list. I would remember that phrase for a long time. So what do? Reggie picked up his knitting again. 1 stitch. 2. Like he was thinking with his hands. "You're going to open that safety deposit box," he said. "The one at the bank. The one you've been putting off." "I have been putting it off. I understand. But you're going to open it. You're going to take everything out. You're going to bring it home. And you're going to put it somewhere in your house where a man looking for it would find it, but where finding it requires effort. Not on a coffee table. In a closet. Under something. In a container that requires him to work to open. So that when he opens it, there is no ambiguity about what he came to do. You want me to bait him. I want you to give him exactly what he's been looking for. And I want him to take it while a camera is rolling and an officer is standing on your porch." I set the coffee cup down. My hands were steadier than they'd been all week. "How do I let him know without telling him that I've opened the box?" Reggie smiled. It was a small smile. Measured. The smile of a man who had been doing this for 30 years and still occasionally enjoyed it. Who does he talk to? His mother. Perfect. 1 more stitch. Tell his mother. I walked out of Reggie's office into the late afternoon sun on West End Avenue, and I stood on the sidewalk for a full minute, letting the warmth hit my face. Nashville smelled like exhaust and magnolia, and the particular sweetness that comes off the river when the wind shifts east. People walked past me in both directions, and not one of them knew that the woman standing outside the law office in the plaid skirt was about to open a dead woman's safety deposit box and use it to end her ex-husband's life, as he knew it. I got in my car. I sat with my hands on the wheel, and I drove to First Horizon Bank. It had been 14 months since Vivian died. 14 months of not opening a safety deposit box because every time I thought about it, I sat down at the piano and played Clair de Lune until my fingers ached and the thought passed. 14 months of finding reasons. I'm not ready. The bank closes at 5 and I work until 4:30. It's raining. It's Tuesday. I don't have the right shoes. 14 months of excuses that got thinner every week until they were transparent and I was still not going. I went. First Horizon Bank on Church Street. I parked in the lot across the street and sat in my car for 6 minutes, because 6 minutes felt like the minimum amount of time I needed to pretend I was a person who could handle this. The building was brick and glass and looked like every bank in every city in America, which is to say, it looked like a place where feelings are not welcome. The woman at the counter was named Brooke. Her name tag said so, and her face said she had already helped 11 people today, and none of them had been interesting. I told her I needed to access a safety deposit box. She asked for identification. I gave it. She typed something. She led me down a hallway into a small private room with a desk and a chair and lighting that made my skin look like I hadn't slept in 14 months, which was only partially true. She placed the box on the desk. It was smaller than I'd imagined. Metal, gray. The kind of box that could hold a life's worth of decisions and still fit in a filing cabinet. "Take your time," Brooke said, and stepped out. She did not mean it. Brooke had 11 more people to help, but she said it, and I appreciated the performance. I sat there for 3 minutes with my hands flat on either side of the box, not touching it, just being near it. The room hummed with fluorescent light and the muffled sound of the bank doing bank things on the other side of the wall. Someone laughed. A phone rang. The world continued while I sat in a small room trying to open a box that belonged to a woman who had loved me better than most people who shared my blood. I opened it. Inside, a manila folder, thick with papers. I pulled it out and opened it. The first page was a receipt from Heritage Auctions, Dallas, Texas, dated 3 years before Vivian's death. Itemized list of vinyl records sold at auction. Elvis Presley, Sun Records Original, signed sleeve. Johnny Cash, 1955 first pressing. Patsy Cline, limited release, pre-1963. 47 records total. Gross sale, $191,000. Net after commission, $187,412. The second page was a donation receipt. Nashville Public Library Foundation, $187,412. Designated purpose, construction and furnishing of the Vivian Ashford Music Room, second floor, main branch. Donor, Vivian Eleanor Ashford. She had given it all away. Every record, every dollar. She had taken 50 years of collecting, 50 years of flea markets and auctions and estate sales, and the particular joy of finding a record you'd been hunting for in a bin at the back of a shop on a Tuesday afternoon, and she had turned it into a room where anyone could walk in and listen to music for free. No appointment, no membership, no name on a list, just a door and a pair of headphones and a small brass plaque that read, "The Vivian Ashford Music Room. For anyone who needs a song." I set the papers down. My hands were shaking. Underneath the folder was a small velvet pouch, navy blue drawstring closure. I opened it and a bracelet slid into my palm. Silver, delicate, a chain of small links with a single charm, a quarter note hanging from the clasp. On the inside of the clasp, engraved in letters so small I had to hold it under the fluorescent light to read, "For the daughter I chose." I closed my hand around it. I held it against my chest. And I kept going because if I stopped, I would not start again. 2 envelopes at the bottom of the box, both sealed. Both addressed in Vivian's left-handed slant, the handwriting I knew as well as my own. The first envelope said Sloan. I opened it. "Sloan, honey, the records are gone. The money went somewhere better than his pockets. The bracelet is yours. Play Claire de Lune for me sometimes, and don't let my son break what I built. Love you, girl. V." I read it twice. I pressed it against my mouth. It smelled like her perfume, the discontinued one she'd been hoarding, faint and floral, like gardenias left in a warm room. The second envelope said Grant. I should not have opened it. It was not addressed to me. But Vivian had left it in a box that only I could access, in a bank that only I had the key to, which I took as permission. Vivian was deliberate about everything. If she'd wanted Grant to read it first, she would have mailed it. I opened it. "Grant, I loved you every day of your life, but I couldn't trust you with $1, so I gave my house to someone who earned it. Be better, Grant. You still can. Mom." 17 words after the greeting. I counted them later. 17 words that contained an entire relationship, love and disappointment, and a door left slightly open at the end, the way a mother does even when she knows she shouldn't. Be better. You still can. I sat in that small room at First Horizon Bank on Church Street and I cried for 15 minutes. Not the pretty kind. The kind where your nose runs and your mascara gives up and the fluorescent light makes everything worse and you're grateful that Brooke is on the other side of the wall, not caring. I cried for Vivian, who had loved her son enough to write him a letter and not enough to trust him with her house. I cried for the bracelet, for the quarter note, for the daughter I chose, which was the kindest thing anyone had ever engraved on anything. And then I stopped, because I had somewhere to be and something to do and a dead woman's plan to finish. I put everything in my tote bag, the auction receipt, the donation papers, the bracelet in its velvet pouch, both letters. I stood up. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I walked out of the room. "Thank you," I said to Brooke. Brooke did not look up. God bless Brooke. I got to my car, sat with my hands on the steering wheel, still shaking, dialed Mika because I needed a voice that wasn't the one in my head. I opened it. And? "There's no fortune, Mika. There never was. She gave it all away. Every record, every dollar. $187,000 to the public library." Silence. 2 seconds. That woman was something else. "Yeah," I said. She really was. I needed coffee. Real coffee. Not the bank kind that tasted like regret in a paper cup. I needed to sit somewhere that wasn't a small room with fluorescent lighting, and I needed approximately 90 seconds of pretending I was a normal woman on a normal Friday afternoon who had not just read 2 letters from a dead woman that rearranged her entire understanding of the last 2 years. I stopped at Frothy Monkey on 12th Avenue South. It's one of those Nashville coffee shops that has exposed brick and pour-over options and a chalkboard menu written by someone with better handwriting than me, which is everyone. I ordered a lavender latte because I had earned a lavender latte. I had earned several. I sat down at a booth near the window with my tote bag between my feet on the floor, the tote bag containing every worldly possession Vivian Ashford had left behind in a metal box, and I took a breath that went all the way down to my shoes. That's when I heard it. "Sloan! Oh my goodness, what are the chances?" Lorraine Ashford was standing 4 feet from my booth, with her arms already open for a hug and a smile on her face that was working very hard to look surprised. She was wearing a denim jacket and carrying a purse the size of a small suitcase, and her hair was freshly blown out, which told me she had not stumbled into this coffee shop by accident. Lorraine does not blow out her hair for errands. Lorraine blows out her hair for performances. Nashville has, at a conservative estimate, over 500 coffee shops. Lorraine lives in Hermitage, which is 25 minutes from 12th Avenue South, without traffic, and there is always traffic. Lorraine was not here because she wanted a latte. Lorraine was here because someone had told her I would be here. I rewound. Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, I had told Priya at the piano studio that I needed Friday afternoon off for a personal appointment downtown. I had said the words "I need to stop by the bank" out loud in the studio kitchen while refilling my water bottle. Priya was connected to the world the way all supervisors are, meaning information traveled. Or, and this was the one that made me want to scream into my lavender latte 3 weeks ago at the Kroger on 21st Avenue, Lorraine had bumped into me in the cereal aisle, sweet as pie, asked me how I was doing, asked me, with the casual precision of a woman who had rehearsed the question, whether I'd ever gotten around to dealing with Vivian's things at the bank. I had said, probably this month when my schedule clears up. I had told her the month. I had handed her the timeline like a gift. She had carried it home to Grant like a dog with a bone, and he had been counting the days since. She was sitting across from me now. I had hugged her because not hugging her would have been a tell, and I was not ready to show my hand. She smelled like vanilla perfume and hairspray, and the particular scent of a woman who is pretending to be somewhere she wasn't supposed to be. "Just running errands," she said. "Thought I'd grab a coffee." "How are you, sweetie? You look tired." "Long week," I said. "Work stuff?" "Kind of. I actually just had to handle a bank thing." I watched her face, Vivian's paperwork. Finally cleared out her safety deposit box today. There it was, the micro-expression, a small bright thing that moved across her face like a flash of light across water. Surprise, not at what I'd said, at the confirmation. She had been waiting to hear those exact words, and hearing them hit her like a Christmas morning she'd been counting down to. "Oh," she said. "Oh, that must have been emotional." It was. Did she leave anything special in there? There are moments in life when you can feel the other person leaning toward you with their whole body even though they haven't moved. Lorraine was leaning. Every cell in her was leaning toward my tote bag on the floor. "Some papers," I said. "A bracelet. Some personal things. You know Vivian, she was sentimental." She really was. Lorraine's voice was soft and warm and completely hollow. "I'm glad you finally did it, sweetie. I know she would have wanted you to have whatever was in there." I smiled. The smile of a woman who has nothing to hide, which is the face you make when you have several things to hide, and a dead woman's letter in your bag, and a plan forming in your chest like a fist. "I should get going," I said. "Early morning tomorrow." "Of course. Of course." She hugged me again. Longer this time. Her eyes went to the tote bag when she pulled away. I saw them go. "Tell your family I said hi," I said. "I will. Take care of yourself, Sloan." I walked to my car. I did not run. I put the tote bag on the passenger seat. I gripped the steering wheel with both hands, and I drove home at exactly the speed limit because I did not trust myself to do anything fast. Here's what I want to be clear about. In the original version of this story, the version where I'm the bumbling protagonist who accidentally stumbles into things, Lorraine showing up at my coffee shop would have been a mistake. I would have said too much by accident. I would have tipped my hand without knowing it. That is not what happened. I knew she was there for him. I knew the moment I saw her blown-out hair and her oversized purse and her rehearsed surprise, and I told her exactly what I wanted her to carry back. I told her the box was open because I needed Grant to know the box was open. I needed him to believe the contents were now inside my house. I needed his timeline to accelerate because I was tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of tired that lives behind your eyes and makes everything taste like cardboard. And I wanted this finished. Reggie had said tell his mother. I had told his mother, not his mother by blood, but close enough. Lorraine would call Grant before she got to her car. Grant would start planning before she hung up. And I would be ready. I pulled into my driveway, went in through the back door because the front door still felt contaminated, set the tote bag on the kitchen table, sat down, took an envelope from the junk drawer and a pen from the cup by the phone. I made a list on the back of the envelope. 1. Deadbolt install Saturday. 2. Cameras, 2 hidden. 3. Lockbox for the bait, Home Depot. 4. Call Sergeant Dunn, Reggie's contact. 5. Priya, take next Friday off. Non-negotiable. 6. Do not answer Lorraine's calls. I looked at the list. It looked like the to-do list of a woman who had completely lost her mind. It was also, I realized, the first list in 8 months that made me feel like a person. I spent 45 minutes in the lock aisle at the Home Depot on Nolensville Pike on Saturday morning. 45 minutes. I want you to sit with that number. There was a man who worked there named Dale. His name tag said Dale, and Dale walked past me 3 separate times, each pass slower than the last, like a satellite in a decaying orbit. On the 3rd pass, he stopped. Ma'am. You doing okay? I'm buying a lock, Dale. Yes, ma'am. I'm taking it very seriously. Yes, ma'am. I'm also buying cameras. Dale took one measured step to his right and pointed down the main aisle. Electronics is in 23. Thank you, Dale. Ma'am, are you building a safe room? Something like that, Dale. Dale did not ask a 4th time. Dale had seen enough. I bought a smart deadbolt with a keypad entry, the kind where you punch in a code and it sends a notification to your phone every time someone opens the door. $279. I bought a 2-pack of small wireless cameras, one designed to look like a smoke detector, for $94. I bought a video doorbell for $89 because the one thing this entire experience had taught me was that I never again wanted someone on my porch without me knowing about it first. And I bought a metal lockbox. Fireproof, 18 inches by 12. Cheap cylinder lock that a moderately motivated toddler could defeat with a paperclip. That was the point. I bought the lockbox because it was cheap. I wanted the lock to lose. $34.17. The price of a trap? The checkout woman scanned everything without comment until she got to the lockbox. She looked at it. She looked at me. I said, "It's for my mother-in-law's things," which was technically true, and which I then repeated twice more, because lying to a Home Depot cashier under fluorescent lighting is apparently a skill I do not possess. I drove home with the trunk full of hardware and a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since before the divorce. Maybe longer. There's something about buying a deadbolt that makes you feel like you're taking a position. Like you've drawn a line on the ground in brass and steel and you're daring someone to cross it. I installed the deadbolt myself. That sounds more impressive than it was. It mostly involved me watching 4 YouTube videos in sequence, cursing at a drill I'd borrowed from Mika, and calling Mika at one point to ask if strip the screw meant what I thought it meant. It did. I had done it. You're supposed to apply even pressure, Mika said. Mika, I am applying the only pressure I have. Get a bigger beat. I don't know what that means. The drill bit. The pointy thing. Thank you for the technical terminology. The new deadbolt was up by 4 in the afternoon. I programmed a 6-digit code, a date that meant something only to me, and I'm not telling you the number because I have learned things about myself this month, and one of them is that I overshare when I'm nervous. I tested it 3 times. It worked. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal of the new lock, and I stood there in the entryway for a long time. Here's a thing I want to tell you because I think about it a lot. There's a grief that comes with installing a deadbolt on the house someone you used to love lived in. It's not the big kind of grief. It's the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest like a stone you swallowed on purpose because putting it down felt worse. A deadbolt is you saying out loud, in wood and metal, that the version of your life you used to have is not coming back. It's you marking the door. It's a small funeral for your own trust. I put my hand flat against the deadbolt. I said, "Vivian, he is not getting this house." The piano in the other room made a sound. Soft, not a note. More like a tink, the way old wood does when the temperature shifts and the grain settles. It could have been anything. Humidity. The house breathing. Nothing supernatural. I chose to hear it as a yes. The cameras took another 2 hours. The smoke detector one went in the hallway ceiling near the bedroom, angled down. I tested it from the app on my phone, walking back and forth until the motion detection picked me up. The second camera, the small one, went inside the bedroom closet on a shelf behind a stack of folded sweaters, aimed at the floor and the lower shelf where the lockbox would live. I tested that one too. The feed was clear. The angle was right. You could see the closet floor and about 2 feet of the surrounding area. The doorbell camera went up last. The wiring on the old doorbell was older than me and had opinions about being replaced, but by sunset I had a live feed of my own porch on my phone, yellow bug light and all. Then I set the bait. The lockbox went on the closet floor, under a pile of off-season sweaters I hadn't worn in 2 years. Not buried, not hidden in a way that screamed hidden. Just tucked. The way you'd put something you didn't want to think about every day. The kind of thing a man searching a closet would find in 90 seconds if he knew what he was looking for. Inside the lockbox, I placed the donation receipt from Heritage Auctions, a photocopy of Vivian's letter to Grant, a replica of the silver bracelet I'd bought that afternoon at a jeweler on 8th Avenue for $42 because the real one was going somewhere safe, and a manila envelope labeled in my own handwriting with a black marker, Vivian Vinyl Appraisal Records. That envelope was empty, but he wouldn't know that until he opened it, and by then it would be too late. The real bracelet, the real letter, the real everything, went to Mika's house that evening. She put them in a Ziploc bag in her kitchen junk drawer behind a grease-stained takeout menu from a Thai place that had closed in August. Not beautiful. Not dignified, but safe. Those things were Vivian's and then mine, and they were not bait. They were not part of the plan. They were sacred in the way that small things become sacred when the person who gave them to you is gone. I drove home. I checked the cameras. All 3 feeds loaded clean. Motion detection armed. Alert set. I stood in the middle of my living room and I looked at the piano and the vinyl shelf and the rooster hook by the door, and I thought, this house is ready. I'm ready. I was not ready, but I was closer than I'd been in 8 months, and that was enough. Thursday night, 11:47 p.m. I was in bed with my phone propped against my knees, scrolling through the camera app the way other people scroll through Instagram, which is to say, compulsively, joylessly, and with the vague sense that I was ruining my posture and my mental health simultaneously. I had been checking those camera feeds every 45 minutes for 6 days. You would think this would feel like control. It mostly felt like a part-time job I hadn't applied for and couldn't quit. Every notification made my heart do a small, violent thing. Every shadow on the hallway feed made me sit up. Every time the doorbell camera picked up a neighbor walking a dog or a delivery truck rolling past, my body flooded with a chemical I did not enjoy. 6 days, nothing. No Grant, no Dodge Charger, no silver Honda Civic with a waving idiot inside. Just me, my cameras, and the slow erosion of my ability to sleep like a human being. That's when I saw the battery icon. The closet camera, the one aimed at the lockbox, had a small red indicator in the upper corner of the feed. 6%. I sat up so fast, my phone almost flew off the bed. 6%. The closet camera ran on batteries. I had known this. I had read the instructions out loud to myself while installing it. I had written charge closet cam every 3 days on a post-it note and stuck it to the coffee maker in the kitchen, where I had not looked since Monday because I had been drinking my coffee in the dark standing at the sink like a person in a witness protection program. I got out of bed, found the charging cable, swapped the battery pack at 12:09 a.m. Standing on my tiptoes in the closet in pajama pants and a sweatshirt that said Nashville's best piano teacher on the front, a Christmas gift from a student's mother that I only wore at home because the implications of wearing it in public were both flattering and deeply misleading. The camera blinked back to life. Full battery, feed restored, everything fine. Except, what if he had come during those 6 days? What if the battery had dipped below the threshold and the recording had stopped and I had missed it? The hallway camera was still plugged in. It had been running the whole time. If he'd entered through the front door, It would have caught him in the hall. I opened the app. I pulled up the recorded history on the hallway camera. I scrolled back through the week. Motion alerts, one after another. Me walking past at 7:15 a.m. Me coming home at 6. Me going to the bathroom at 2 in the morning because anxiety apparently affects the bladder and nobody warns you about that. Monday, nothing. Sunday, nothing. Saturday, me installing cameras, which was frankly embarrassing to watch from a third-person angle. I looked like a woman losing a fight with a drill. Then Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. A motion alert I had not generated, because at 2:17 p.m. on Tuesday I had been at the piano studio on Belmont, teaching an 11-year-old named Cora how to play the opening bars of Moonlight Sonata. I had been sitting on a piano bench explaining that pianissimo means very soft, not very fast, while a man I used to be married to was walking through my hallway. The clip was 41 seconds long. I tapped play. A figure in a dark jacket moving down the hallway toward the music room. No lights on. Phone flashlight in his left hand, the blue-white beam swinging across the wall. He paused in the doorway of the music room, rolled his shoulders. A small thing. A tick. The way he'd always done when he was concentrating, when he was about to sit down at a poker table or open a difficult email or lie to me about something that mattered. I had once found that endearing, the little shoulder roll, the way it meant he was present, focused, about to do something he cared about. He stepped into the music room. The camera caught his back as he crossed to the vinyl shelf. He opened the cabinet, started pulling records out, one by one, holding each one up to his phone light. Checking, returning, checking, returning. Methodical, patient, not rushed, not panicked. He had time and he knew it. You could not see his face. The angle was wrong, the hallway camera positioned too far back, but you didn't need to see his face. I knew that jacket. I knew that walk. I knew the shoulder roll and the way he held his phone, and the specific way he tilted his head when he was reading something in low light, chin up, eyes down, like a bird examining a seed. It was him. It was unmistakably him. Grant Ashford had been in my house at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday while I was teaching a child how to play Beethoven. I put the phone down on the bed. I picked it up. I put it down again. My hands were doing things without consulting me. I started to cry, and then I stopped, because I had told myself I was done crying over this man. And then I started again because my body had not received that particular memo and did not care about my internal policies regarding tears. I watched the clip again, all 41 seconds, then again, then one more time, because apparently I am the kind of person who picks at a wound until it bleeds and then complains about the blood. 41 seconds. That's how long it took him to walk through my hallway, enter Vivian's music room, and start going through her things. 41 seconds of a man who had once promised me forever, treating my home like a storage unit he'd forgotten the code to. Okay. Before I tell you the next part, I need a second. It still stings, even now. Even telling you about it from the other side of it. Some things don't stop stinging just because they ended well. If you're still here with me, and I hope you are, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button right now. And drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching this from and what time it is there. I read every single one. I read them at night when the house is quiet and the piano is closed, and I need to remember that I'm not alone in this. It means more than you know. Thank you. So, where was I? Right, 41 seconds, Tuesday, 2:17 p.m. I need a moment before I tell you what happened next, because what happened next is the part where I fell apart. And I want to be honest about it. I want you to know that the woman who set the trap and watched it close was also the woman who sat on her kitchen floor at 1 a.m. eating cookie dough out of the tub with a spoon. Both of those women are me. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Here's what I did, starting at 12:47 a.m. on a Friday morning in a house that no longer felt like mine. I called in sick to work, not the planned day off for next Friday, an additional call. I left a voicemail for Priya at the studio, and my voice on that message sounded like a woman at the bottom of a swimming pool, trying to explain that she would not be coming in today because she was drowning, but politely. Priya would hear it in the morning. Priya would know something was wrong. I did not, at that particular moment, have the energy to care. I put my phone face down on the nightstand. I went into the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator. I stood there for a while, looking at a half-empty jar of pickles and some leftover rice from Tuesday and a bottle of hot sauce that had been in there since Vivian was alive. I closed the refrigerator. I opened the pantry. I took out a tub of cookie dough, the kind you're supposed to bake, but which I have never once in my life actually baked. I took a spoon from the drawer. I sat down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet, and I ate raw cookie dough in the dark at 1 a.m, like a woman whose entire personality had been replaced by a raccoon. I thought about packing. I genuinely did. I thought about calling my cousin Deborah in Memphis and asking if I could sleep on her couch for a while. I thought about putting the house on the market. It was mine, free and clear. I could get a cash offer. I could be gone in 60 days. I thought about leaving the lockbox in the closet and leaving Grant a note taped to the piano. Take what you think is yours and never come back. I could rent a small apartment in a city where nobody knew me and start over as a woman who had not married a man who went through her dead mother-in-law's record collection at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't going to do any of those things. I knew that even as I was thinking them, but I needed to let myself think them because here's a thing I've learned about being in the middle of something terrible. If you don't let yourself imagine running, you don't know why you stay. You need the exit to exist in your mind so you can choose the door you're already standing in front of. I chose the door. I stayed. But first, I ate approximately a third of a tub of cookie dough, and I am not sorry. Mika showed up at 6:50 a.m. I had not called her. I don't know how she knew. Best friends operate on a frequency that science has not yet identified, and I am not interested in questioning it. She knocked once on the back door. Let herself in with the spare key I'd given her the month before. Walked into the kitchen, looked at me on the floor, looked at the cookie dough, looked at the spoon. "Okay," she said. She didn't say anything else for 20 minutes. She made tea, Earl Grey, because that's what Vivian always drank, and Mika knew it. She put a blanket around my shoulders, the Afghan from the couch, the one Vivian had crocheted in 2014 in colors that should not coexist but somehow did. She sat down next to me on the kitchen floor in her work pants and her studio badge still clipped to her jacket. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and she waited. "He was in my bedroom," I said eventually. "I know. I saw him on the camera. 41 seconds. I know. I don't know if I can do this tonight." She thought about that. She did not tell me I could do it. She did not tell me to be strong. She said, "You don't have to. You can change the locks today. Call Dunn. Tell her we have enough. She can go knock on his door." Would it be enough? Probably not. Trespassing. Fine. Probation. He'd be back. He'd come back. He might. I looked at the floor. The same kitchen floor I'd been sitting on for hours. The linoleum Vivian had picked out in 2003, a pale yellow with a pattern that looked like tiny suns if you squinted. She'd been so proud of it. She told me once that she chose it because she wanted to feel like she was standing in sunlight even on dark mornings. "I want to be done with him," I said. "All the way done. Not probation done. Not he pays a fine and I can't sleep for a year. Done. Done. I want him standing in a courtroom saying, yes, I was in that house to steal. I want his name in a record that follows him to the next woman, because there's going to be a next one, Mika. He's going to do this to somebody else." She nodded slowly. "So I'm doing this tonight." "Okay. I just needed to fall apart first." That's allowed. I got up off the kitchen floor. I put the cookie dough back in the freezer. I showered. I brushed my teeth. I put on clean clothes. I ate a piece of toast with actual butter, like a functioning member of society. And then, because I could not sit still, and because my body needed to be doing something that wasn't sitting on a floor, I went into the bedroom. My jewelry box sat on the dresser. Small, wooden, inlaid. I'd had it since I was 21, a birthday gift from my mother. I opened it the way I opened it every morning, without thinking. Inside, on the top tray, Vivian's bracelet. Not the one from the safety deposit box, a different one. The one she'd given me on my wedding day, a thin silver chain with a small piano charm that she'd had custom made by a jeweler on 8th Avenue. She'd put it on my wrist herself that morning and said, "Welcome to the family, sweetheart. You're the best thing that ever happened to it." I picked it up, and on the underside of the velvet liner of that top tray, there was a smudge, oily, fingerprint-shaped, recent enough that it hadn't dulled. I'd had that jewelry box for 8 years. There had never been a smudge on that liner. He had opened it. He had touched it. He had picked up the bracelet Vivian gave me on the day I married her son, and he had held it in his hands and put it back. Something in me closed. I mean that literally. I felt it happen. A small metallic click inside my chest, like a lock engaging, like a deadbolt turning from the inside. I had been scared for 6 days. From that point forward, I was not scared anymore. I was something colder and more useful. I walked into the kitchen. Mika was sitting at the table drinking tea. She looked at my face. "Oh, honey," she said. "You've got Vivian's face on right now." "Good," I said. "She's the one he should have been afraid of." I called Sergeant Mavis Dunn at 9:15 on a Friday morning. Sitting at my kitchen table in clean clothes with a cup of good coffee and a piece of toast, I had forced myself to eat because you cannot dismantle a man's life on an empty stomach. That's not advice. That's experience. Reggie had given me her number with a warning. She's good. She doesn't suffer nonsense. She has seen more than you and I put together, and she will not be impressed by your situation. But she will take it seriously, and that's better than impressed. The phone rang 3 times. Then a voice. Done. Like a period at the end of a sentence. Not a question, not an invitation. A statement. I am done. Proceed. I need to describe her to you because she earned it. Sergeant Mavis Dunn was 44 years old. I learned this later. She was built like a woman who had run track in high school and never fully stopped, lean and deliberate, the kind of body that moves with economy because it has learned that wasted motion is wasted time. She had a voice like a closed door. Not cold, just finished. Every sentence complete, every pause intentional. I told her everything. 8 minutes. I had practiced in the car on the way back from dropping Mika at her studio that morning. I had written bullet points on an index card this time, a real index card, because the gas station receipt from Reggie's office had taught me that preparation matters. The fake keys. The footage from Mrs. Yu Nakamura. The piano lid. The vinyl shelf. The 6 records with fingerprints. The receipt from the pawn shop. The $4. Vivian's Christmas joke. The crypto losses, the divorce, the will contest, the safety deposit box, the donation, Lorraine at Frothy Monkey, the cameras, the lockbox, the bait. When I finished, Sergeant Dunn was quiet for 5 seconds. I counted. 5 seconds from Mavis Dunn felt like 5 minutes from anyone else. "Ma'am," she said, "are you telling me you've set up a sting operation in your own home?" I wouldn't call it a sting. What would you call it? I would call it being prepared. A pause. Reggie Fairbanks sent you? Yes, ma'am. There was a sound on the other end of the phone that might have been a sigh or might have been a smile deciding not to happen. With Dunn, it was hard to tell. The 2 sounds were very close. "Email me what you've got," she said. "Screenshots of the keys, the camera footage, the text from the mother, the pawn shop receipt, your timeline, everything. I want to see it by end of day." I sent it by 2:22 p.m. I had it organized in folders. I had labeled the folders. I had written a summary document with timestamps and a cast of characters, because at some point during this process, I had become a woman who creates summary documents, and I did not know how to feel about that. Dunn called back at 4:50. "Miss Prescott." "Yes, ma'am." "I'm going to be honest with you. 90% of the calls I get that start like yours are people who want me to arrest their ex for breathing in their direction. Yours is different." "How so?" "You have a returned key that doesn't work." I want to say that out loud because by itself that is remarkable. That is a man who actively fabricated a decoy to conceal that he retained access. That's not a misunderstanding. That's not a feeling. That is a fact. You can put on a table in front of a judge. Yes. The texts from the mother timed with your bank visit are suggestive. The camera footage from the neighbor is not enough on its own, but paired with everything else, it's pattern. The 41-second clip from your hallway camera is strong. The pawn shop receipt is, I'll be honest, the saddest piece of evidence I've processed this year. That seems to be the consensus. Miss Prescott. Yes. Tonight. You said you're going to be at your friend's house. Yes, ma'am. Same routine. Coat on, keys loud, car out of the driveway. My friend lives 12 minutes away. Friday evening. I'll be on shift. I'm going to be in the area of Belmont Boulevard. If something were to happen at your address, I would be able to respond quickly. You call me the minute he's inside, not before. I want him in the house. I want him committed to whatever he's doing. If he's on the porch, I can do trespassing. If he's inside holding your property, trying to open a container, I can do something that counts. Understand? Yes. I am not going to tell you this is a good plan because it is not a plan I can officially endorse. I am going to tell you that if a thing that looks exactly like your plan were to occur on a Friday evening in my patrol area, I would be prepared to respond to it appropriately. Understood. Miss Prescott. Yes. Your deadbolt code. 6 digits? How did you... Your screenshot. The app was open. Top right corner. I could see the code length indicator. You originally had 4 digits. You changed it. I closed my eyes. I changed it to 6 after I installed it. Good. 4 is guessable. 6 is standard. Don't share it. I won't. And, Miss Prescott. Yes, Sergeant. That summary document you sent me was very well organized. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm telling you because the DA's office is going to want it exactly like that. Keep your folders. She hung up. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The coffee was cold. The toast was gone. The house was quiet in the particular way. It got quiet in the late afternoon when the sun moved behind the neighbor's oak tree and the light through the kitchen window turned amber and soft. I got up. I washed the mug. I wiped the counter. I went into the bedroom and I put on the outfit I'd picked out the night before, which sounds like I was going to a party and not orchestrating the arrest of my ex-husband, but I wanted to feel like a person who had her life together, even if the evidence suggested otherwise. Jeans. A sweater that didn't have a stain on it. My good boots. I brushed my hair. I put on mascara for the first time in a week. Not for anyone. For me. At 6:52 p.m., I walked out my front door with my coat on and my keys jingling loud enough for anyone watching to hear. The deadbolt clicked behind me. 6 digits. Mine. I got in my car. I pulled out of the driveway. I drove east on Belmont Boulevard toward Mika's house, with the sun going down behind me and the whole city turning gold. If anyone was watching, and someone was, they saw a woman leaving for the evening. Just a woman in a coat with her keys. They did not see the 3 camera feeds already loading on a laptop in her best friend's dining room 12 minutes away. They did not see the lockbox in the closet. They did not see Sergeant Mavis Dunn parked 2 blocks over in an unmarked car, drinking coffee from a thermos and waiting for a phone call. They saw a woman leaving. They had no idea what she was leaving behind. Mika's dining room table had a scratch on the left side from when her youngest had tried to cut a pumpkin with a steak knife 2 Halloweens ago. I know this because I was staring at that scratch at 7:08 p.m. On a Friday night, while 3 camera feeds loaded on the laptop in front of me and a box of pepperoni pizza sat open between us, with 2 slices missing and a future that was about to be decided by whether or not a man in a Dodge Charger could resist his own greed. This was not a glamorous operation. I was wearing a claw clip and the same plaid skirt I'd worn to Reggie's office. Mika had ordered the pizza from a place on Nolensville Pike that put too much cheese on everything, which under normal circumstances was a feature and not a flaw, but tonight I could not taste anything. My mouth was working. My taste buds were not. 3 feeds. The hallway camera showed my empty hallway, the arc of light through the frosted glass panel of the front door. The closet camera showed folded sweaters, and beneath them the corner of the metal lockbox. The doorbell camera showed my front porch, dark and quiet, the yellow bug light casting its usual amber glow on the floorboards. 7:14, nothing. 7:19. I picked up a slice of pizza, took a bite, put it down. What if he doesn't come? I said. He'll come. What if Lorraine didn't tell him? What if she kept it to herself? Sloan. Lorraine Ashford has never kept anything to herself in her life. That woman told me about her gallbladder surgery at a Christmas party. Unprompted. With visual aids. What if he got spooked? He didn't get spooked. His mother told him you emptied the box 2 weeks ago. He has been thinking about it every waking moment since. It's Friday, you're out. The windows are dark. He thinks he has hours. What if? Sloan. What? Eat your pizza. 7:23. A set of headlights swept across the doorbell camera feed. A car slowed outside the house, stopped for 3 seconds, then pulled forward and disappeared from frame. Mika and I both leaned toward the laptop at the same time, like we were watching the last 5 minutes of a movie we'd already invested 2 hours in. "He parked down the block," Mika said. "He parked down the block." 38 seconds later, a second car entered the frame from the opposite direction, silver Honda Civic. It parked across the street, 3 houses down, engine running. Through the grainy feed, I could see the outline of someone in the driver's seat. Someone who, if past behavior was any indicator, was probably eating fast food and would at some point wave at a neighbor for no strategic reason whatsoever. Kyle. 52 seconds after Kyle parked, a figure appeared at the far edge of the doorbell camera frame, walking up the sidewalk, turning onto my front path, dark jacket, hands in pockets. He glanced once at the porch light, a quick upward flick of the eyes, the way you check a ceiling for cameras when you already know where they are. He reached the door. He took out a key. Not the fake one he'd given me, the real one, the one he'd kept. The one he'd had made somewhere, at some kiosk, at some hardware store, and carried in his wallet for 8 months, while telling himself whatever story a man tells himself when he keeps a key to a house that is not his. The key went in. The lock turned. The old lock, the original, the one I hadn't changed on purpose. It turned smooth and easy because it recognized him, because locks don't know about betrayal, because metal doesn't care who's holding it. The door opened. The door closed. He was inside. I want you to understand something. I had not seen this man in 8 months. Not in person, not his face, not his walk, not the way he held his shoulders when he was about to do something he knew was wrong. And on that camera feed, in the blue glow of my own hallway, watching him close my front door behind himself with a pair of latex gloves pulled up to his wrists and the outline of a pry bar visible through his jacket pocket, I felt a very specific thing. It was not rage. It was not fear. It was recognition. Oh, I thought, there he is. That's who he actually was the whole time. He didn't turn on any lights. He used his phone flashlight, the blue-white beam cutting across the hallway walls, the same way it had in the 41-second clip from Tuesday. Smart enough for that. Not smart enough for anything else. He went straight to the bedroom. No hesitation. No detour to the music room. Not this time. Lorraine had told him what he needed to know. The box was open. The contents were in the house. He didn't need the vinyl anymore. He needed the jackpot. The hallway camera caught him passing the music room doorway without even glancing in. The closet camera picked him up entering the bedroom, crossing to the closet, opening the door. He crouched, pushed aside the folded sweaters. His hands found the lockbox, and he lifted it out with both hands, setting it on the bedroom floor. His face on the closet camera feed, lit blue from below by his own phone, was the face of a man who believed he was about to win. Concentrated, hungry. Not the face of a man who had wandered in by accident. Not the face of a man who was going to tell a judge he was just checking on an old friend. The face of a man who had come to that house to take a specific thing, who had believed for 2 years that the thing existed, who had brought a pry bar and latex gloves and a lookout and a plan. He took the pry bar out of his jacket pocket, wedged it into the seam of the cheap lock. The lock gave with almost no resistance. It was designed to give with almost no resistance. That was the entire point. He flipped the lid open. His phone flashlight swept across the contents. The manila envelope labeled Vivian, Vinyl Appraisal Records. The replica silver bracelet in its pouch. The donation receipt. The photocopy of his mother's letter. He picked up the envelope first, tore it open. His face changed in real time. I will remember it for as long as I live. It was a face expecting a fortune and finding paperwork. A face looking for $200,000 in vinyl appraisals and finding instead a donation receipt from the Nashville Public Library Foundation. He stared at it. He turned it over. He held his phone closer. He read it again. Then he went back to the box. He picked up the bracelet pouch, opened it, looked at it, put it in his jacket pocket. He picked up the donation receipt, stared at it, set it aside. He picked up the last thing in the box, the folded letter. His mother's handwriting on the outside, Grant. He opened it. He read it. I loved you every day of your life, but I couldn't trust you with $1, so I gave my house to someone who earned it. Be better, Grant. You still can. I watched his face on the camera, the blue phone light, the latex gloves, the letter in his hands. and I saw something cross his expression that I had not expected and was not prepared for. He looked like a boy. For about 3 seconds, sitting on my bedroom floor with his mother's last words in his hands, he looked like a child who had just been told something true and terrible for the first time. And then it passed, and his face closed, and he folded the letter and put it in his pocket with the bracelet. "Beside me," Mika said very quietly. "Now." I picked up my phone. I dialed Dunn. "He's inside. Bedroom. He has the box open. He has items in his pockets. He has a pry bar. Copy. 2 minutes." 2 minutes. Dunn had said 2 minutes. I set the phone down on Mika's dining room table, and I watched the camera feeds, and I counted seconds the way you count seconds during a thunderstorm, trying to measure the distance between the lightning and the thing that comes after. On the closet camera, Grant was still on the bedroom floor. The lockbox was open in front of him. The pry bar lay beside it. He was holding the donation receipt, the one from the Nashville Public Library Foundation, and he was reading it again, slowly this time, the way you reread something when the first reading didn't make sense, and you're hoping the words will rearrange themselves into something better. They would not. $187,000. Donated. Gone. Turned into a music room on the second floor of the public library, with a brass plaque and a dead woman's name on the wall. The fortune he'd been hunting for 2 years had been given away 3 years before he started looking. His phone buzzed in his hand. I could see the screen light up on the camera feed. A notification, then another, then a third. Gambling app alerts, probably. The glow pulsed through his latex glove like a heartbeat in a hospital. Then the doorbell rang. On the doorbell camera, I saw Dunn's outline. Dark uniform, badge catching the yellow bug light. She pressed the bell once, then she knocked. Firm, 3 times. The knock of a woman who was not asking to come in. On the closet camera, Grant's head snapped up. His whole body changed in about 3 seconds, and I watched it happen the way you watch weather move across a field. First, confusion. A frozen moment where his brain tried to sort the sound into a category that wasn't dangerous. Delivery, neighbor, mistake, then calculation. His eyes moved to the bedroom window, to the hallway, back to the window, then panic. Pure, uncut, animal panic. The kind that lives in your legs before it reaches your brain. He stood up fast. The donation receipt fell from his hand. He grabbed the pry bar off the floor and shoved it into his jacket pocket. The bracelet and the letter were already in there. He stepped over the lockbox, which was pried open and bent, and would not close no matter how hard he tried, and he moved toward the hallway. The hallway camera caught him coming out of the bedroom at a half run. He turned left toward the back door, took 4 steps, stopped. Officer Reeves was standing on the other side of the back door. I could not see Reeves on the camera, but I could see Grant's face when he looked through the glass panel and saw him. It was the face of a man who had just run out of directions. He turned around, walked back through the hallway, past the music room, past the vinyl shelf, past the piano that his mother had bought the year he was born, and that he had never once learned to play. He stood in the living room for a moment, breathing hard, and the hallway camera caught him in profile, latex gloves on his hands, pry bar in his pocket, his dead mother's letter against his chest. Gambling notifications still lighting up his wrist through the sleeve of his jacket. He walked to the front door. He opened it slowly. The way a man opens a door when he knows that every version of what's on the other side is worse than where he is now. He stepped onto the porch. Dunn was waiting. "Sir." Hands where I can see them. He raised his hands. The latex gloves looked very white under the yellow bug light. Dunn zip-tied his wrists behind his back with the efficient, practiced motion of a woman who had done this more times than she probably wanted to count. Officer Reeves came around from the back of the house. He was large and young and looked like he had been standing in the cold for a while and was professionally unbothered by it. They did the thing where they pat you down and narrate what they find. I could not hear the words on the camera. The doorbell feed didn't pick up audio clearly from that angle. But I could see Dunn's hands moving. I could see her pull the bracelet from his right jacket pocket, the pry bar from the left, the letter, folded, from his inside breast pocket, and from his wallet, the key, the real key, the working key, the one he'd kept for 8 months, the one he'd carried every day, the one that opened the front door of a house a judge had already told him was not his. They put everything in evidence bags, clear plastic. I watched the bracelet go into one bag, and the pry bar go into another, and the key go into a third, and I thought about how strange it is that the end of something can fit inside a plastic bag. Then there was Kyle. I need to tell you about Kyle because Kyle is the part of this story that I could not have predicted and that I will be telling at dinner parties for the rest of my life. The third officer, one I hadn't seen arrive, had walked down the block to the silver Honda Civic where Kyle had been parked for the last 20-some minutes. The officer approached the driver's side window. Kyle was inside. The officer knocked on the glass. Kyle was eating a Taco Bell Crunchwrap Supreme. He was also crying, not because he'd been caught. He didn't know he'd been caught yet. He was crying because, as he would later tell the officer in a statement that Dunn read to me with the driest delivery I have ever heard from a human being, I didn't even want to be here. He told me he was picking up a couch. The officer looked at him. A couch at 7:30 on a Friday night in a Honda Civic. Kyle cried harder. They charged him with accessory, Kyle, the lookout who waved at the neighbor, the getaway driver who was eating a Crunchwrap and weeping in a Honda Civic, the man Grant had chosen as his partner in crime. Vivian would have had something to say about that. Something sharp and perfect. I could almost hear her. On the doorbell camera, I watched them walk Grant across the porch. His mouth moved. I couldn't hear it. But Dunn told me later, sitting at my kitchen table the following week with a cup of Earl Grey, shaking her head the way she did when the job surprised her even after 20 years. He had looked at her, standing on my porch in zip ties under the yellow bug light, with his mother's letter in an evidence bag and a bracelet that wasn't even real in another one, and a pry bar that had done exactly what it was designed to do, and he had said, "I just wanted what was mine. That's all this ever was." Dunn told me she had looked at him for a long second. Then she said, "Sir, you came in here with a crowbar and latex gloves. Nothing in this house is yours. A judge already told you that." And she walked him to the cruiser. I sat at Mika's dining room table with the laptop still open. The doorbell camera showed my empty porch, the yellow bug light still glowing. The hallway camera showed my empty hallway. The closet camera showed a pried open lockbox on the bedroom floor with nothing inside it. Mika put her hand on my shoulder. I closed the laptop. And for the first time in 4 months, I didn't check the camera. Saturday morning, the sun came up over Belmont Boulevard the way it does any other Saturday, which is to say without ceremony and without caring what happened the night before. The light came through the bedroom window at an angle that hit the dresser first, and then the jewelry box, and then the floor, and I lay in bed and watched it move, and I realized I had slept through the night, the whole night. 7 hours, no camera checks, no 3 a.m. kitchen floor. No phone clutched against my chest like a woman holding a grenade she'd forgotten to throw. I had slept. My body had decided, apparently without consulting me, that the war was over and it was time to stand down. I lay there for a few minutes, listening to the house, the radiator ticking. A bird outside. The particular silence of a Saturday morning when no one is coming and no one is inside, and the only key that works is the one attached to a 6-digit code that belongs to you. My phone lit up at 7:30. Lorraine. Incoming call. I looked at the screen. I watched it ring. I let it go. 9 minutes later, Lorraine again. I let that one go too. She called 11 times between 7:30 and 10:15. She left 3 voicemails. I did not listen to a single one. I imagine they ranged from concerned to frantic to something that sounded like concern but was actually strategy, which is Lorraine's specialty, the ability to make self-interest sound like love. At 11 a.m., I sent her one text message. I typed it slowly. I read it twice before I hit send. His court date will come in the mail, and Vivian would be ashamed of all of you. I put the phone face down on the kitchen table. I made breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs scrambled with cheese because I deserved cheese. Toast with the good butter from the ceramic dish Vivian had kept on the counter for 30 years. Coffee from the bag in the freezer that I only ever opened for holidays, funerals, and apparently the morning after your ex-husband gets arrested in your closet. I sat at the kitchen table in a pair of jeans and a sweater that did not have a stain on it, which was, for me, roughly formal wear. I ate slowly. I tasted everything. The eggs were good. The coffee was better. The toast was the best toast I had ever eaten in my life, and I am aware that this is a dramatic thing to say about toast, but I am telling you the truth. Reggie called at 11:40. He had already spoken to the district attorney's office because Reggie Fairbanks III does not wait for Monday when Friday night hands him a gift. Miss Prescott. Reggie. The DA is charging your ex-husband with burglary in the 3rd degree, Class D felony. Criminal trespass, Class C misdemeanor. Possession of burglary tools, Class A misdemeanor. He entered a habitation without consent, with tools, with the intent to commit theft of specific property he had previously identified and pursued over an extended period. The items recovered from his person, the bracelet and the letter, combined with the pry bar and the fabricated key, establish both intent and execution. And Kyle? Accessory. The young man gave a statement in the patrol car that was, in the words of the arresting officer, remarkably detailed and entirely self-incriminating. He apparently believed that cooperating immediately would help. It will not help his case as much as he thinks. What does this mean for Grant? He's going to take a plea. Men like him always take a plea. His attorney will negotiate. The DA will counter. They'll land somewhere between 2 and 4 years, depending on his record and what he's willing to admit. Years. Years, Miss Prescott. Not months, not a fine, not community service. He will have a felony conviction. It will follow him to every rental application, every job interview, every background check, every dating app that runs one, for the rest of his life. When he puts his name into the world, this is what comes back. I sat with that. Reggie. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I made 2 phone calls. You did the rest. Monday, I went back to work. Walked into the studio at 8:45 with my bag over my shoulder and a coffee from the good place on Belmont, not the cafe where I worked because on Mondays I did not pull espresso shots. On Mondays I taught children how to make music, and that felt like the most important thing a person could do. Priya pulled me aside before my first lesson. She looked at me the way people look at you when they can see something has changed but they don't know what. Sloan, I don't know what's going on with you, but you look different today. Good different or bad different? She thought about it, rested different. I told her I'd pick up the Saturday lesson slot the week after. I hadn't planned to. I decided in that moment, standing in the studio hallway with the sound of a 6-year-old practicing scales badly through the wall, that I wanted to. Because for the first time in 8 months, I was going to go home after a Saturday shift and sleep in my own house without wondering if someone had been in it while I was gone. An extra day of work seemed like a reasonable price for that kind of quiet. Tuesday afternoon, I baked brownies. I want you to understand that I do not bake. I have never voluntarily baked anything in my life that did not come from a box with instructions. These came from a box with instructions, and they were still slightly underdone in the middle, and I burned one corner of the pan because I forgot to set the timer, which I think says everything you need to know about my relationship with ovens. I walked them across 2 lawns to Mrs. Nakamura's house. She opened the door before I knocked because of course she did. She looked at the brownies. She looked at me. You baked, she said. I tried. Come in. She ate 2 brownies and told me a 25-minute story about a bonsai exhibition she'd attended in Portland in 2019, where a man had tried to pass off a nursery juniper as a 40-year specimen and been publicly corrected by an 80-year-old woman from Kyoto. I listened to every word of it. I listened the way you listen to someone who helped save your life without knowing it, which is to say carefully, and with the understanding that you owe them whatever story they want to tell. When I walked home across her yard, I looked at my house, the porch sagging on the left, the rooster hook through the front window, the piano waiting inside. My house, Vivian's house, still standing. That evening, I drove to Mika's house and picked up a Ziploc bag from her kitchen junk drawer. It was behind a grease-stained takeout menu from a Thai place that had closed in August and next to a box of birthday candles from a party neither of us remembered. Not beautiful, not dignified, but the safest place I knew. Inside the bag was everything that mattered. The real bracelet, silver chain, quarter-note charm, for the daughter I chose, engraved on the clasp. Vivian's letter to me. Vivian's letter to Grant. The originals. The things that were not baked. The things that were never part of the plan. Because some things are too sacred to use as strategy, even when the strategy works. Mika handed me the bag at her front door. She didn't say anything. She just held it out and I took it, and she put her hand on my arm for a second and squeezed. Then she said, "Go home, Sloan. Play the song." I drove home. I went in through the front door this time. Not the back, the front. I punched in the 6-digit code and the deadbolt clicked open and I stepped into the house the way you step into a place that belongs to you, which is to say, without apology. The piano was waiting. It's always waiting. That's the thing about a piano. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't leave. It sits in the center of the room, like a promise somebody made a long time ago, and kept. I took Vivian's letter to me and I opened the drawer of the piano bench, the little compartment where she used to keep sheet music and old programs, and once, inexplicably, a bag of butterscotch candies that had been there so long they'd fused to the wood. I placed the letter inside, on top of the sheet music for Claire de Lune, so that every time I opened the bench to play, I would see her handwriting first. Sloan Honey, the records are gone. The money went somewhere better than his pockets. I put the bracelet on my wrist, the real one. The quarter note hung against the inside of my wrist, cool and small, and I closed the clasp and I did not take it off. Then I sat down at the piano. I lit a candle, one of Vivian's, a gardenia-scented thing she'd kept on the piano's music shelf for years, replaced every few months, always the same brand, always the same scent. I had a box of them in the hall closet because I'd bought 12 the month after she died, knowing they'd be discontinued eventually, knowing everything she loved would eventually stop being made. The flame caught and the smell filled the room, and for a second, just a second, it was like she was standing behind me the way she used to, one hand on the back of the bench, listening. I played Claire de Lune, from the beginning, slow, the way Vivian liked it. The way Debussy intended it, she always said, although I suspect Debussy's intentions were less specific than Vivian believed. The notes came up through the keys and into my hands and out into the room, and the room held them the way old rooms do, with warmth and memory and the particular kindness of walls that have heard the same song 1,000 times and never once complained. I played the whole thing, every measure. I didn't stop, I didn't cry. I just played. And while I played, I thought about Grant. I thought about what he'd said on my porch. I just wanted what was mine. That's all this ever was. The saddest part, and this is the part that still gets me if I sit with it too long, is that I believe him. I think in his own small, bent-up way, Grant really did tell himself a story where he wasn't stealing, where the records were his inheritance, where the house should have been his, where the 11 months he'd lived under this roof entitled him to whatever was inside it. He had come looking for a fortune that his mother had turned into a public music room, and he had found instead a letter telling him to be better. That is the only true thing he ever found in this house. God has a sense of humor about these things. I don't say that lightly. I say it because a woman who spent 50 years collecting vinyl records chose to give them all away so strangers could listen to music for free, and her son spent 2 years trying to steal them back, and the whole time they were hanging on a wall at the public library with her name on a brass plaque that he could have visited any day of the week for no charge. There's a grace in that. A grace in the way things come around. A grace I didn't earn and don't fully understand but am grateful for. I thought about Vivian, about the woman who had seen her son clearly and loved him anyway and still chose to protect the things she'd built from the person most likely to destroy them. That takes a kind of courage I hope I never need, but suspect I might. She had sat at this piano and played this song and made her decisions quietly, without drama, without announcement. She had given away a fortune and told no one. She had written 2 letters and sealed them and put them in a box and trusted that the right person would open it at the right time. Some doors close so the right ones can open. I think the man upstairs had his hand on my deadbolt that night, guiding the lock, holding the frame. I don't know if I believe that literally. But I believe it enough to say it out loud in a room that smells like gardenias, and that's enough for now. I finished the song. The last note hung in the air the way last notes do, not wanting to leave, not quite ready to become silence. The candle flickered. The bracelet caught the light. I reached up, and I closed the lid of the piano. Gently, the way Vivian taught me. Brass hinge aligned. No scratch, no force. Just a soft click. Wood meeting wood. The sound of something being put back where it belongs. The first time I found that lid open, it meant someone had broken in. Tonight, closing it meant something different. It meant the house was mine. The piano was mine. The song was mine. And the woman who had given them to me was still here, in the flame and the music and the smell of gardenias and the handwriting in the bench drawer that said, "Don't let my son break what I built." He didn't. She didn't let him, and neither did I. So tell me, would you have set the trap, or would you have just changed the locks and walked away? I want to hear it honestly. I want to know what you would have done sitting on that kitchen floor at 1 a.m. with cookie dough and a choice. Drop it in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, and tell me what you would have done. Tell me if you've ever loved someone who didn't deserve the key you gave them. I think most of us have. I think that's the part of this story that belongs to all of us. And if this story reached you, if it sat with you, if it made you think about your own locks and your own keys and the people you've trusted with both, then do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And there's another story waiting for you right there on your screen. Go ahead and click it. I'll see you over there. I finished playing. I closed the lid of the piano. And this time, it stayed closed because I wanted it to.